that route, like Boris's past ain't exactly the cleanest.
The funniest one was when he was like, there was a bit where a BBC journalist did. We'll just start now. We won't fuck intros and all that bullshit. But he was talking about there was like a BBC journalist, right? He was walking through the street and there was like this massive anti-lockdown and anti-vax crazy person, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? It's been called many things, and there was like people shouting in his face like traitor, traitor, and Boris was saying that freedom of press and that should never be like intimidated and that. But it's like, I remember seeing the guy on Have I Got News For You like 20 years ago, and they were talking about the time that Boris and his mate had like colluded to beat up this journalist for saying mean things about him in the paper. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, what in any way, shape, or form do you have any right to condemn this? But like, so when did he get elected? He got elected like late 2019. It was like December election.
2019 on a like absolute landslide.
Because it was like the two of them. They were both kind of polarizing figures, right? Him and Corbyn, the Labour guy. And he like took over from Theresa May. Oh well, actually, by the way, did you see her absolutely body slam him in the House of Commons the other day? That was
with her 3 points.
Yeah,
like, it was
3 strikes.
It was
you're
just
out.
like shit.
Yeah, like well, we've spoke about this a few times on here, and I was saying that even though Boris has like this whole memeable side of he's going down like this tightrope with fucking Union Jacks and that, and people are like, oh, he's just a meme, you know, he's harmless and that. Like, he's a very devious character in the sense of he's calculated his moves very, very well to get into office. Like, for years on end, you'd hear him on talk shows and stuff like, no, I don't want to be Prime Minister and all this kind of stuff. And then he was like pretty much the face of the Leave campaign for the EU referendum. Yeah. And like I've said, I mean, I voted Remain in Europe, the referendum for that. But at the end of the day, a Democratic vote happened, and whether you knew about it or not, most people voted to leave, whatever thing that is or whatnot. So like my kind of point of view on it is surely because David Cameron resigned right after all that went through, that it probably makes sense that someone from the Leave campaign actually do the deal that they've wanted the entire time. And then it was him, Theresa May, who obviously ended up winning because everyone pulled out basically. And that guy, the Scottish guy, Michael Gove, they were all in like this leadership contest.
Scottish guy.
Yeah, Scottish guy, allegedly Scottish.
Turns up in Aberdeen nightclubs and stuff.
I can't believe, like, he literally just been like harping for restrictions everywhere, and he's out partying.
Yeah, but the thing about that report was he turned up, he wasn't with anyone, he was just out and about himself.
Yeah, that's extremely weird. But it's like, can you imagine like a conservative night out?
Oh man, it would be like
everyone's like having martinis and talking about cutting disability benefit or something. Like,
yeah, it's like caviar going about like little children waiters and stuff. You know,
we'll recover from this hangover by playing croquet tomorrow.
Yeah, or water polo.
But like, so he was like, right, I'm stepping away from this, and it's like, well, why? Like, you've probably got to... If he had stood for that leadership contest in 2016 or whatever, I reckon he probably would have won, right? Because all the people that were Brexiteers were still in the Conservative Party, and he probably would have been Prime Minister then.
Pretty much, like.
But my point of view on that is I think he kind of knew that whoever the first person... It's kind of like, you know, when Alex Ferguson left Man United and everyone was like, the next person's going to get absolutely shafted when they go in there, and, you know, David Moyes died for it in the end. Yeah. It was kind of like that in the sense of whoever is going to go into this negotiations has got some bill in their hands, because like the European Union weren't exactly, easy to negotiate with. Like, how many deals did they bring back? It was like 10 or something. Like, there was one every 3 months. I think
like Britain, essentially, the UK thought they had more power than they actually did within this like in structure of talks and deals and things like.
Yeah.
I think if the general public knew what they knew now, and you see like, look at the price of living these days, and like you can't say that's not because of Brexit.
Yeah, like some people are like, oh, well, wine's down 13p, and it's like, so like, try getting fuel at the moment. Do you know what I mean? For any half decent price.
But it's like they're trying to say that it'll work in our favor eventually. Like,
yeah, trust the process.
60 years time, I'm going to be dead, you know, and I'm going to have like struggled my whole life to make that work for future generations. Exactly. You know,
but it's when it comes to like Boris and that, obviously, like, we were just saying that he has this kind of side. It was like, oh, he's harmless, he's just funny, and he maybe doesn't know what he's doing and that. But the thing is, the scary thing is he kind of does know what he's doing.
To be in that position, you've got to know what you've done. Like, it's got to really hit home that, like, how bad a leader you are, that David Cameron's more popular than you are, like, considering what he done in his time in charge, you know. Especially in Scotland, you know, I wouldn't like to put a number on it, but I could probably pretty much guarantee that David Cameron is more popular than Boris in Scotland. Mm-hmm. Purely down to the fact of, like, Boris has just treated us like absolute crap for the past 3 years.
Because he keeps coming up when it gets, like, really close to, like, him getting overthrown. He's like Boris was coming up to save the Conservatives.
He's his little friend. And,
but is he his little friend now? They've kind of eaten each other alive, right?
I think that's a bit of faux pas, though, isn't it? It's like, to look good for a camera, or to look good for a newspaper headline, you're going to say these things.
Yeah, true, because... So, like, obviously we're talking about Douglas Ross, who is quite well known now. Like, it started off as him not cutting some sort of grass and not attending parliamentary meetings with farming and that, and everyone just hated him in this area. And now it's like he's the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, and everyone knows who he is. Yeah. And so basically, Douglas Ross was confronted because obviously he's the leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, so he's, you know, or he's a lightweight apparently, and head up terms, but they were confronting him about the whole Boris shenanigans that's been going on with the parties and Zoom quizzes and being ambushed by cakes and all this kind of ridiculous stuff that's been going on. And
remember milkshaking?
Yeah. Well, like, you've seen some of the videos that have, like, came out of, like, him, like, on the dance floor, not Douglas Ross, but Boris Johnson, like, he's, like, dancing, like, these crowds and nightclubs and stuff, and it's like, when I first seen it, I was like, have they actually got, like, video footage of what was going on? He was like, COVID briefing at 5, but, you know, cutting shapes at 6.
Yeah, and, like, the whole party situation, it's just been an utter farce. The report was a farce.
Yeah. Half of it got deducted.
But, like, if there was a general election tomorrow, I reckon people would still vote for him.
Yeah.
You know? That's a crazy fucking thing.
If like, he manages to hang on through this, like, he's probably favourite to get re-elected in 2024 or 2023, whatever it is that.
And if that happens, like, he's going to be sitting thinking, like, right, what can I get away with?
Yeah.
You know, I've only got one more term, so, like, I can't come in for a third term. It's not going to happen anyway. So
how much more bags can I get away with here before it's all said and done?
Yeah, pretty much.
And, like, you see it with the whole COVID contract. Like, it's not just the parties. Like, there's a lot more.
Do you know why Brexit was constructed in the first place? Do you know there's many reasons.
Yeah.
But they brought in a thing called start of 2020. They brought in basically like a massive tax on offshore accounts.
Right. Okay.
Within the EU.
Mm-hmm.
And they floated this idea around about 2014, 2015. I can't give you exact dates. But obviously, people in power seen that this was going to happen. There's not one person in the House and Commons that doesn't have
an offshore tax account. They've got something.
Investment. So they reckon that this was kind of conjured up in part. There's obviously a lot of other reasons, and they can put a lot of other cases forward. But this was a massive tax avoidance scheme initially, which is turned into a snowball this size to a snowman this size. You know, we are all suffering massively because they want to get richer.
Mm. And, like, do you know what Boris kind of reminds me of Richard Nixon in the way is that he sacks everyone that, like, helps him out to save himself. In this,
or he just moves them around.
Yeah, it's like it's not exactly sacking; it's just a new role.
Like, I've never understood that with ministers though. Like, how can you go from being foreign minister to being health minister? You know, surely you've got to have masses of knowledge on these subjects.
Yeah.
But
you just get placed there. Like, you know, I've been negotiating a peace deal with Russia the last few weeks, but, you know, it's back to the vaccination program.
Exactly, yeah. But there's also a lot of, like, outside influence when it comes to Boris. I feel Boris is a bit of a puppet. Yeah,
he's an easily controlled person. You can tell he's quite a weak person in the sense of he does look easily bullied, right, when it's in that kind of circle that he roams in to an extent. Like, I was having a look at because obviously there's been the thing with sleaze and that been brought up as well with the whole, they were going to change the law for that MP that was getting suspended for 30 days and then he ended up resigning or something and they lost the by-election, all that stuff that happened. But, like, the amount of people that are, like, conservative members in the House of Lords that have donated significant amounts of money to the actual party is like, that is barefaced corruption any way you want to put it. Like, they might have been able to swindle it to the point where it's not on paper corruption, but anyone with like a half good eyesight can see that that's what's going on. And like we were saying a couple of weeks ago, like every government, well, in my lifetime anyway, and it's probably just because I'm older that I see it now, like every government has had a corruption to an extent, but not once has there been this one that's just been so open about it and like is happy for it to be out there. Like they don't even bother trying to like cover it up. They just
it's and with the internet and the scope that people are under these days, you're going to find it hard to hide this kind of information. You've also got the Freedom of Information Act. You know, that's it's a wonderful thing. A lot of stuff can be redacted in it, but you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who's in what position and redacted statements. Going back to your party report, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's taken out of that, but
because the police got involved and were like, yeah, see those 4 dates, we're investigating them now, so you're not going to be able to drop them. And it's like, if you look at, especially the police force that's investigating it, I believe it's the Metropolitan Police Force. By the way, just bring that mic a little closer to you.
Yeah.
Please. Like, is it Carissa Dick, I think, is the head, whatever it is, superintendent. If you look at all the shit they've been through this year in terms of stuff with Sarah Everard and the amount of like fuckery that's been going on in that police force for like, it's all came out this year. Like even the case with the 2 officers that got put in prison, they took the photos of the corpse and that, and like making memes of it and that, and like these are meant to be people that are. I always kind of believe like the whole public servant, you know, the police are there for the public's always been a bit of a kind of farce in a way, because if you protest something that the government does, who keeps you away from the government? It's the police,
exactly,
innit? But when you look at the type of people that they're employing in that role, and I think, you know, obviously the conversations have been had a lot in America for totally different.
Are you speaking specifically about the Met or just police?
Just police in general, right? Because I'm sure like the Met's obviously scrutinised to an extent because it's the biggest police force in the United Kingdom, right? It obviously deals with London, which is, you know, the biggest city in the entire country. It's got more people in it than, you know, Scotland has in it. So like when you've got that many people on top of each other, there is going to be more crime as a result of it, because all kind of situations arise when people come into contact with other people and stuff. But the press that they've had, because obviously the kind of national news of like the Sarah Everard thing and then how they handled the kind of demonstrations after that, the police bill thing, which I suppose we can get onto in a minute as well, which is just, you know, a little minuscule thing of where they're going to take anyone's right. I mean, I was looking at the police bill thing, and like some of the stuff in it is like near on like laughable in the sense of they're going to be able to control the noise volume of protest. Like, so they're getting rid of protest then, because I mean obviously like this, they use this blanket of peaceful protest and stuff like that, and I'm not saying that people should be going out and burning shit down and everything like that, because I think there is like people that get caught in the crossfire when mobs start doing stuff like that, but
leave it to the Rangers fans.
Leave it to the experts. But when it comes to protesting, it's meant to be an inconvenience. So if you can't block a politician from going when they're needing to go, or they can't hear you, then your protest doesn't exist. Do you know what I mean? Like, I suppose in a way though, protest hasn't been listened to an extent. Like, you know, the episode that I did last week was on the Iraq War, and that was like some of the biggest protests that had happened in human history.
It's not like insulate Britain.
No, no one was gluing their face to the road and stuff like that. That was ridiculous, and it was mental that the guy that was like the head of them didn't even have his own house insulated.
Did you see the video of the guy with the tractor? He just like plowed through them. He totally just like took the guy out. The guy was like obviously in a bit of pain. Wasn't totally smashed up or anything like that, but like, mate, it's a tractor. You're not gonna win, you know.
Exactly, yeah. And like I've seen like van drivers pulling them off the road, and then they go back on the road, and like you see the police just watching this, and like surely something needs to be done, because this is basically going to end up like the purge. People are going to get
how many people for the Iraq protests? What was that, like 500,000 at least? 1 million
through Westminster and all that. They went, wasn't it? Past Downing Street. Well, not past.
So
Downing Street,
I would have been probably like definitely school age round about that. And I remember that quite vividly. Like,
because I remember Chris Eubank parked a truck outside. I can't remember, he was against Iraq, but I just thought it was interesting. It was Chris Eubank of all people that came along. Don't send soldiers to Iraq or something. And then he tried to park it in front of Westminster Abbey or something like that, or the House of Commons. I can't remember. It was one. Chris Eubank came along in a lorry and blocked something, and then he got arrested for it. But I think it's fair to say that conflict in particular, obviously, there's a lot of kind of polarizing stuff to do with like war on terror in general, but that specific isolated incident, I think you could probably say that the majority was not in favor of doing it, and then they just did it anyway. But that's like the common trend of state not really kind of listening to its people. But like the border stuff is just out of this world. Kind of, I'm not even surprised by it. Like, if someone had told me in 2019, like, he's going to do all this stuff and he's going to be in the circus of whatever's going on now, would I be surprised? No, not really. Like, the guy's always kind of been this eccentric weirdo with power that kind of just...
How much do you think that has to do with the media, though?
I think the media play a big part in his... I think the media have always played a big part in government, right?
Because I feel the media portray him very good light.
Yeah, they try to come across as like, oh, well, it's just Boris, you know. It's not like he's trying to like fuck over your living circumstances or anything like that. If this was
Jeremy Corbyn, he'd have been gone.
Yeah,
like, he'd have been gone, man.
I look at that, right, and I kind of view myself as more like a political neutral now than anything. I used to be like a massive like SNP voter and stuff, and it's not necessarily anything to do with the party is why I've kind of changed stance on that. It was more, I was of like a mindset of like anyone that was moderate or conservative viewing was just a bad person. And then like something happened in my life where I came across someone that like helped me out that like just, I don't know, just over a coffee was talking about their kind of political beliefs, and it kind of got me thinking. So I don't do it for like, oh, this person's right, this person's wrong with that. I just try and like keep an open mind about most things, but obviously, like, you know, I'm not going to vote for the Conservative Party. That's one thing that's off the table. It's like if your kid says to you, I'm going to support Tottenham, you're like, no, that's off the table. It's just not happening.
Like, it's, I will probably continue to vote SNP. That's just me. But that, to me, I look at it on a more of a local level.
Yeah.
Douglas Ross is massively to do with that with me. I feel, especially like we've got, I think it's council elections coming up.
Yeah. Kind of like our version of by-elections or whatever.
Yeah. In a place like Murray, council elections are actually massively important because we are such a small county. You know, any decision made by the council has a huge impact. Whereas Glasgow City Council, it has huge impacts on what they're doing, but a lot of Glasgow is privately owned.
Yeah.
You know, vast majority of Murray is council-owned, council areas, you know. One small decision, like a change of leadership, could have huge effects.
On it,
the way I'm thinking of it is like, Tory to me is a belief system.
Yeah.
It's not a political party.
It's a kind of class elitism kind of mindset, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. And there is certain aspects of it. If you look way back to like sort of imperial times, it worked because it built strong countries. But we're 200-300 years on from that now. You know, we have totally different ways of living these days, and it doesn't work anymore. I feel that whatever the Queen really, where her political allegiance lies, is normally where the swing of the government goes. And just now I feel like with her aging and people trying to get away from royalty, Conservatives have always really been about royalty, sticking on to royalty.
Monarchy,
and I think
imperialism, empire.
Royalty being a dying breed, that has a big influence on it. And also touching back to media, Murdoch. You know, that's kind of your biggest.
We're just going to pretend that the news of the world thing didn't happen, you know.
Exactly. You know, and there's a lot of guilty parties there. It's not just the Tories, but if you look deeper into it, it's massively influenced in the House of Commons and deeper into the House of Lords. House of Lords, they get paid £300 a day. Yeah. To sit and essentially I don't actually know what they do.
Yeah. And some of them don't even turn up and still get the coin.
Like, have you ever watched like the House of Commons channel?
Yeah, like BBC Parliament and stuff like that.
Sometimes you'll get the House of Lords and there's like 3 guys in the back just sleeping.
Yeah, just like,
and it's like, these are the guys that are in charge of the country. What the hell's going on?
It's mental. And they've just paid their way to get there to get paid back. And I think there's like I'm always of a belief system now that, I used to listen to Russell Brand, right? Do you remember he was in like London and he was like talking about the system and no one should vote and stuff like that, and I was like, that's a bit extreme at that moment in time. But there's part of me that's kind of came round to it a bit more in the sense of I know there is like a difference between like the Conservative Party and Labour, for example, but I don't think it's that much of a difference than what it once was. Like, no. I think obviously the circus would stop in terms of all these parties and like really eccentric things that Boris does that, people either laugh or get more angry about, right? Because it's just that it's like it's in a cartoon, isn't it? It's like it doesn't feel like real life. Yeah. But I don't really see, like, if Keir Starmer won an election tomorrow, I don't really see much changing in terms of living circumstances for the people. And
I feel like also with a lot of people who maybe generally lack interest in politics, Boris is your easy option.
Yeah, because he's like that reality TV star, isn't it?
He's like, all right, I know this guy. This guy's in the news a lot. He's kind of funny sometimes.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit about like the gaffes that he's made, like all these mistakes, how many lives he's cost, how many billions he's cost the country. They don't really care.
Just turn it to the left a bit. There we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
But they will, like, a lot of guys will think of the time he came down with the flags.
Yeah. Someone get me a ladder.
The time he wiped out the kid with a rugby ball.
Oh my goodness. That guy got absolutely murked.
Yeah.
But he took the guy out of the celebrity football match as well, where he basically tried a double leg takedown on him.
I remember that, yeah. But it's like, people will remember that over, he killed 200,000 people during COVID.
Yeah.
He had all these parties when everyone was like, couldn't even go to funerals of their loved ones.
And there's two ways you can view that, right? In the sense of, obviously, they're being irresponsible at a time. That's just one point of view, but it also kind of says, well, like, because he's obviously viewed to a vast array of expertise that the government have, right? Whether you believe that, I know there's a lot of kind of debate on how legitimate some of the people in this scientific advisory group are and stuff like that, but for the majority, you'd imagine there's a lot of like really expertise people in their own fields that he's getting to see the information about.
Yeah.
So if he's seeing all that, and they're having massive gatherings, it kind of comes across as they're not even that afraid of what's the repercussions of they all got COVID or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, I'm not saying that COVID's not a serious thing. I've had the actual disease, and I know everyone's. When people say like, oh, it was just a cold or it was just a flu, which, okay, fair enough. It will be like that for most people, but it's going to not be like that for a vast majority of people as well with certain circumstances. Now, that doesn't mean that I instantly support segregations of societies and that, which is a lot of conversation that's going on now. But it's also, I'm not one way or another an extreme of open everything up and everyone just like start like pulling in the street and everything.
Herd immunity.
Yeah. I'm not exactly like that, but at the same time, I don't think that this constant in-out restriction stuff has done any good for people, whether it be people that are vulnerable to it or people that aren't.
You kind of go back further with than COVID with like failings. You're looking past like even Boris. I feel like Conservatives over the last 10 years, look at things like Grenfell.
Yeah.
Look at things like the Windrush.
Yeah, the Windrush scandal.
Yeah. Brexit.
Yeah.
That wasn't like, Boris took us out, but Boris wasn't the one that constructed Brexit.
No.
Like Nigel Farage and things like that, whatever happened to that guy?
He kind of, GB News that has like 5 listeners, but Boris kind of jumped on he's seen his opportunity, right? Theresa May was getting absolutely nowhere. She was just coming back with the same deal all the time, and then
did you ever actually look at any of her deals?
A little bit.
They weren't the worst.
No, they weren't exactly horrible, right? But hard right-wing Brexiteers were like, no, we need more, like, like sovereignty and all that stuff. And then, because I always find it weird, right, when I mean, I suppose I'm a hypocrite when I say this because I voted pro-independence, but I voted to remain in the European Union. But sometimes I think to myself, like, people not understand, like, they're kind of not the same thing to an extent, but like, there's the same kind of, you know, people bring sovereignty up on both. So I don't see why people are so, like, I know it's like left and right and all that, but
they're like, well, how can you want out of one union? But still want to be in another?
Yeah,
and it's like, well, to me, a union is a partnership of equals.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, that is very true. And Scotland and England are definitely not equals.
Not equals in that partnership. Whereas the EU, you always get more out than you contribute.
Yeah,
and it's been proven since.
What was it that Boris he had on the slogan on the bus that just turned
350 million that we could be putting into the NHS that we are currently sending to Europe every week.
Do you think he like miswrote it and it was like, I'm going to take 350 million away from you? Like,
but they figured out like track and trace plus COVID was costing something like 600 billion a week.
The person that was running that used to
600 million, so it's not 600 billion.
And like, let's be honest, test and trace has been the almost humongous of failures. Like, it's literally, because, you know, it can't be viewed as anything else because we've
Dido Harden on the rich list, though.
Yeah, I mean, like she was the head of T-Mobile.
Yeah,
and I'm like, do you know what I mean, though? Like, you're looking at, I mean, obviously he's doing it because, like, she's in with them and stuff like that. And it's the same with, like, Priti Patel. There was an investigation into that. Guy came back and was like, yeah, she's been bullying people. And Boris was like, doesn't matter. Sack the guy that did the investigation. Everyone's having a swell time. It's just, like, it does feel a bit endless. I do think he is in the final days of his era because I do think that I think everyone's jumping on the bandwagon because I've always said these people eat each other alive, right? So, like,
who's next then?
Yeah, well, it's not going to be anyone better, is it? It's just going to not be as obvious with the, you know, ridiculousness of it all.
I think they knew that Boris was going to fail. I just didn't think they realised it was going to be such the avalanche that it has been with him.
Well, the COVID thing has obviously accelerated the whole destruction of how he's done things because I reckon if I don't want to say that there's any positives, pardon the pun, out of coronavirus coming about, but it has kind of shown what he would have been doing anyway, but in a more public light. Absolutely, just because there's so many transactions on the go and like there's so much media attention on one thing. But yeah, you're right. I'd like if it was someone like Sunak or Liz Truss or whoever would come in to replace him, it's like it's not going to be much different. Is like Sunak's literally just put everything up to like 5 billion quid per person or something ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and then you could give him more power. And it's just going to get worse. You know, you've also got like Patel. You know,
oh God,
we're going to end up like concentration camp.
We'll be getting deported.
Yeah, we're Scottish. And it's like, no, you don't belong here.
Nope. Faroe Islands, be it. But like, you know, I think there is good like I got into a mind frame for a bit where I was like, you know, like all politicians are the same, but I don't think like that now. I obviously know there are individuals that are in there for like good reasons.
Do you remember the guy Dennis Skinner?
Was he was a Liberal Democrat? Or?
He was a Labour, long-time Labour.
Oh, he was the one that called David Cameron Dodgy Dave.
Yeah. So he was a bit like a common guy. He was well educated, obviously, to be in the position he was in. But he kind of just spoke his mind and spoke what everyone else was thinking within his constituency, and he stayed in his constituency for like 40 odd years. You know, so it just proves that if you go by what your constituents actually want, you're going to stay in power for a long time. You know, he never made it very high in the House of Commons, probably due to that fact. But he was always in a position where he was MP. You know, he always had a vote and things. And it would be a bit refreshing to see more politicians a bit like that. Like, I always forget her name, Mary Black.
Yeah, that's the one that got elected to the SNP when she was 20.
Yeah.
Because they were bringing up tweets of hers like maths is shite and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, fair enough. I think we can all agree on that.
But like, she's another one. She kind of, she speaks for Scotland in a sense, but she does speak a lot of what we are thinking up here, you know, and it's quite refreshing to hear. Whereas you've got people like Douglas Ross who you could read what
he's worrying about porn being written on walls and stuff like that. You know, the important subjects.
Yeah, you could read what he's going to say from a textbook. Yeah, and, you know, he's programmed, that guy.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of a conspiracy on the go that we think he might be a bit of an android, but don't know. Maybe have him on the podcast and try and suss him out. But I don't think he's going to come on, to be honest, if he's watched it previous.
I'd be keen for that one.
Yeah.
100%.
He's not coming on if you're in the room.
I got on a few of his live feeds.
You'll remember those comment sections like, no way in hell I'm coming in with 5 meters with that guy.
It was them live streams he done on Facebook, man. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
It was like Douglas Ross just went live on Facebook. I was like, oh,
I was like, let's go.
Oh God, get the cigarettes.
Someone that might be in this room allegedly. I was watching one of these live feeds, right? Because you did watch them, right? Because it was like, even though some of it was maybe borderline harassment at times, it was funny. So,
100%.
You would just see a certain someone in particular would just pop up with, does he bully young girls? Because allegedly he was bullying
Sarah Candy on Twitter. Anyone? Sorry.
Yes, I know that she I know who she is, yes. So I've heard that story as well. And let's just say people don't forget. Allegedly, of course. We haven't got the button for it yet, but we've expressed that. Neil Young, don't come on.
Like a Jerry Springer button.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
I'm going to have to hire someone for that. Or maybe teach my cat to do it. I don't know. But there was that allegation, right? Which most conservatives, you can kind of think that they're better than other people. And I don't think that's a controversial statement to say. Like,
I would go as far as most politicians.
Yeah, most politicians definitely do. But I suppose when anyone gets that amount, like, if you got told the next day you can make decisions that affect the country, like, my ego's really easy. I win a game of pool, I feel on top of cloud nine. Yeah. So I suppose I can understand it in a way. Not necessarily mean that I'm going to fuck the country over by taking 300 million, allegedly. But so these live streams were going on, and it wasn't just one person in particular. There was quite a few, but like Douglas Ross would kind of look down, and he's obviously seeing this abuse that he's getting, and he's kind of playing it off like someone's just said, "Oh, I don't think you're a good politician." I was like, "Oh well, sorry that you disagree with me," and stuff like that.
Yeah, most politician answer you'd ever hear.
One of the best ones I've
Deflection.
seen. I was looking through his comment section, and if anyone's got any spare time, I do encourage you to look through Douglas Ross's comment sections, because some of them do get quite funny.
They get very heated as well. You've got very, very staunch unionists in there who will be by the flag, but you'll also have staunch nationalists who will be by the flag.
Yeah. They're getting ready to have a scrap outside a statue. It's
pretty much turned into Jacobite times,
over Facebook.
It's hold on, wait till I get my kilt.
Do we need a sword? No, you just need a smartphone and be able to use English literature in the comment section.
But you'll see people get so pernickety about things in these comment sections. I've seen ones get so crappy that it's they'll go down to oh, you spelt this word wrong. Yeah,
that's what no one has any argument left. They're like, oh, you've used "you're" instead of "you are."
Yeah, it gets that bad, and you're just like, come on, guys.
It's just bad energy in any way. And it's.
But do you know, at the end of the day, all this is good publicity for him.
Yeah, it really is.
Isn't it? It could be any post in the world. There's a post that kicks about on Facebook, and it's brilliant. I think it was I follow a page called I Fucking Love Science. IFLS, it's changed its name to be PC now. Okay. But there's a picture that goes about, and I've seen it shared many times, and it's people will argue that this is called a rock.
Yeah.
And the comment section goes absolutely crazy. People calling it a stone, people calling it. But it just goes to prove arguments cause popularity among social media, So if he's got 5,000 people on his live stream slagging him off, that's 5,000 people who are commenting on that, liking on that, sharing that. I shared it.
Yeah.
I shared it. I shared it to a few independence pages. I'm not afraid to admit, I got well into the independence movement.
I mean, I'm pro independence as well. The thing that's made me, because I voted in the 2014 referendum, I was like, enough of this. I wanted it, at least if Scotland was shit, at least I chose to make it shit rather than my vote be overruled by we've seen it time and time again. The whole of this country voted to remain in the European Union, and most of stuff like Wales and that did as well.
Yeah.
And then one country kind of overruled all that.
Look at Liverpool.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's quite weird in the sense of it's not just Scottish people. It's Scottish, Geordies, Scousers, like the northwest of England and that have all suffered at the hands of austerity and all that. And some of these these communities in England don't even consider themselves like English because of the whole conservative thing.
Yeah.
So it does seem like a London based thing. I'm sure there's very good people in London as well. I'm not saying that everyone's voting for Boris down there, but I'm just saying it does seem the more south that you go, the more kind of, well, unless you're here because this is a Tory area, but
one of the very few as well.
Yeah, and it was very close last time. It was only like 400 votes in it.
I feel with this area as well, we have 2 military bases. Like, and people are like, well, a lot of these guys can vote where they want, and it's like, I get that, right? But if it's not just guys that are in the military now, you've got guys that were in the military 30 years ago. Who still live here, who really enjoy this area. This is a lovely area to live in. Mm-hmm. I know many guys myself who are ex-RAF and things like that. Enjoy the area. I wouldn't like to go out on a whim and say what their political beliefs are, but if they're grown up in a certain part of England, certain like Tory strongholds and things like that, they're going to have a political belief system that's different to ours.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't feel it's just that they are able to influence an election up here, when potentially these guys are up here till they retire
and then go back down,
move back home or something like that. I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, and I could probably say that there's a lot of ex-military guys that vote SNP.
Yeah.
But it's got to have, when you've got like such a small majority through a vote, it's got to have an influence of some sort.
Yeah, and I like you were saying with Douglas Ross gaining popularity from, because nothing seems to negatively affect him, right? Like, this all started with just this local community complaining about him, and now he's head of like the entire fucking party of the country. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not downgraded at all. He's he's one of the only people I believe that has 2 constituencies, because he's an MP for here and he's the MSP for the Highlands and Islands. So he covers 2 areas now. I think he said that he's not standing here again, so...
Yeah, because he got in through the list vote, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which is like... when Scotland was given devolution to begin with, they still instilled a political system that was kind of unjust. You know, the list vote will always be like a proportional vote.
Yeah.
The guy was never going to get in. That's why he didn't stand, it's just not going to happen. So he knew he had a route to...
Yeah, getting in there.
But the guy's got 4 jobs.
Yeah, he's a referee. But the money that he didn't disclose apparently had nothing to do with all 4 of them.
Well,
yeah.
And that's,
Rumble Douglas,
Yeah, 20 grand.
Yeah.
20 grand, man. But he's...
Don't suppose you fancy building us a podcast studio, do you? We could maybe talk to you about you a bit more positively.
Happily, bring down council tax a little bit. Yeah.
Make better refereeing decisions.
But you're not going to, are you?
No, you're not going to. You're definitely not. But
more restrictions for gypsies.
Yeah, Jesus. Like,
I feel so sorry. I don't have much dealings with like gypsy community or things like that, but like that was just a massive discrimination against them guys.
If you look at the actual quote, like, obviously there's a lot of we'll maybe touch on the Joe Rogan thing for the last 20 minutes. I know it's not necessarily to do with that, but
right. Can I just ask you a question before I kind of goes out of my head? With like gypsies not really having a fixed abode. Do they have a vote? I'm not too sure on that myself.
Well,
because I thought you had to be like the electoral register is surely to your house, isn't it?
Yeah, down to a house, isn't it? That's a very good question. I'm not too sure on that,
Maybe I'm gonna have to look that up because
you wouldn't be surprised because you would think it would be very unlikely that community would vote for the Conservative Party.
No chance.
So you would think if they could find a loophole to take away that right from them, they would do.
Especially someone like Douglas Ross.
Well, the quote that he said that I seen, right? I don't know if maybe someone had doctored it or that, but from what I seen. So this might not be the official quote. It was to do with I think it was like an allotment or something. They got the grant to be able to be there, and he said something like, "I don't understand why we have to bend over backwards for this ethnic minority," quote unquote. Now that says it all, really, doesn't it? Like that's brutal. That's
proper sick. Because that's
elitism. That's taking away kind of the humanity of a group of people in the sense of
who are just living their life by their own choice.
Yes, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of negative press that are associated with travelers, and it's due to like maybe a small group of travelers.
Yeah, but you have that in any group in life. You know?
have that. You took the words right out of my mouth there. You have that with absolutely anyone, and you will probably find that the majority of travelers are not like that. You know?
And you know, the most famous traveler is the heavyweight champion of the world and one of the most inspiring people on earth. Yeah. So, you know, you can't just be like, oh, this little group, because I think everyone falls into the, you know, it was the same when, you know, the tensions were high with like when we were in wars in the Middle East and stuff like that. People, you know, these kind of far right wing groups would always be like, you know, this generalization. It would make it about the actual culture and the whole group of people, rather than saying like there's some bad people that are maybe using this as a weapon to get you to cause division and stuff like that between yourselves, you know. But yeah, Douglas Ross, it's a very peculiar. I mean, I was shocked when he got in 2017. I never expected this area to turn blue. I really didn't.
Do you think that was down to a weak candidate from the SNP?
Well, Angus Robertson had been MP for here for quite a while, I believe.
Sorry, I'm talking about 2019.
Oh, 2019. It was Richard Lockhead's assistant, wasn't it? Laura Mitchell.
Yeah.
Who I've actually been in contact with for the documentary. So like anything that's said here is not like an insult or anything.
To be fair, she absolutely smashed it for taking him so close, considering
like it was
he is
400 votes or something.
Established politician. Yeah. That's not something that really. I think that kind of shit him up a bit.
Yeah, no, he thought he was out. Yeah, he admitted it on the morning. He was like, "I'm done."
Yeah,
and then I don't know, maybe someone slipped someone a brown envelope allegedly.
So going back to like 2017, I agree. I don't think he expected the result.
No,
and I don't think he was prepared to go into that position.
No, or I think it was kind of more. I think the Conservatives maybe smelt blood in this area, and then because they made a really big push for it in 2017 to get it over the line. Because like the elections before it wasn't even close. Like there was no, do you know what I mean? Whereas now it's like one of the most divided areas in Scotland, I would say.
They had to send Boris up in 2019.
Yeah.
It's actually strange. My son was born about a month before that, and we kept the newspaper, and Boris Johnson had visited.
Mm-hmm.
We checked the newspaper when I was born. The exact same week I was born was the last time a Tory Prime Minister visited in John Major.
Yeah, well, he went out. He went outside.
That's 30 years, you know.
Yeah,
and look what's happened at 30 years from 1999 onwards. It's been an SNP dominated area, you know.
Because when he does visit, it is here he visits, isn't it? It's not like
absolutely.
It's not like he's visiting like
it's Baxter's. We've got Baxter's because he's got a big donation from Audrey Baxter, you know. RAF bases. I think
he went to a distillery as well.
If the next time he's up, I think he'll possibly have something to do with the spaceport.
Yeah,
because this is the big thing in the area now. You know,
that's been talked about for. I can't believe we're actually at the point where we're getting that now. I
remember we moved it through yesterday.
Yeah,
it was kind of crazy. I didn't see it coming through Elgin, but I'd heard about it all over like Facebook and stuff, and it's mental to think that's happening.
Yeah, like the first time I heard about it was in 2005, and they were saying Richard Branson was looking to build it here, and then I think he went elsewhere, and then I suppose
was the original plan not Lossy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously I seen Richard Branson in space like 6 months ago. Where he's giving it the old look at how good I am, you know.
Lossy's had some like grand designs for things over the years.
Really
do you ever remember there was a plan for a nature reserve out at the quarry?
Mm-hmm.
They did like huge like safari park and things,
and also a Morrison's. Go see the rhinos and then get yourself a chomp at Morrison's.
Oh, great! And then you had like they were on about an international airport here.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's also, I believe, during the Cold War, it was the third target for the Soviet Union if the Cold War had kicked off, because obviously it's a very close base to the North Sea and stuff like that. It's a very good strategic point, hence why it's managed to survive all the cuts over the years. You know, it's not because Lossy's like somewhere they view fondly. It's just it's in a good position to combat
absolutely
threats, I suppose they would call it. And obviously now it's, I know it's still a RAF base, but it is kind of being turned into a NATO base in the sense the investment the Americans have put in.
Yeah. You can see boats coming out of Lossy one day.
Yeah, it's going to be, and you know, like you were saying with the military guys moving, I think we're going to see a lot more American population live here as well afterwards, which I'm not saying is a bad thing or anything. I'm just saying
it'd be good for the area. You know, if it's going to bring in money to the area, it's something apart from our military base, which is we don't have a great deal of money in this area. Like the whiskey's here, but the whiskey's now mass exported to Japan or China, and that's where all the money is made on it these days. The North Sea oil, they keep telling us it's running out. There's plenty of oil left.
Yeah, but it's just down in price.
Yeah, because of COVID and the things, they couldn't shift oil during. Nobody was driving cars, you know.
That's why, like, there's all these things that, you know, when like people get paranoid, like, my phone's listening to me, and it's like, well, I know you want to think it's because they want to catch you out for doing something bad, but it's not. They just want to exploit you and put stuff in front of your face that you're going to buy because your information is now the new oil.
That's what I loved about the people with the whole tracker chips for their COVID jabs. It's like, mate, you got your phone tracks you.
We're one of the most surveillance countries in the world already. It's not a new thing.
Yeah. So that phone in your pocket is just not surveillancing you, is it? You know,
no.
If you're scared, you know, you hear about like 3G, 5G chips, and
the thing is, like, they try and come out with stuff like VPNs that are like, okay, now no one's going to see, but they're going to find a way around that. Yeah. Do you think that that's going to like ruse MI5 or something like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, is it?
Like there's mind you, there was that guy, that young Scottish teenager who hacked MI5, didn't he?
Well, there's the odd one.
Play them at their own game.
Yeah. Trying to sell them like toilet roll or something. Why do we keep getting ads? Like, he hacked the Met Police as well, didn't he?
Met Police, there was like CIA and all sorts he got
Gary
into.
McKinnon, do you remember that guy? Yeah. He hacked the Pentagon and the Americans.
Is he still in jail?
He didn't go to jail.
He didn't go to jail?
No, well, what happened was the Americans were pushing... Because when he did this, it was around the time of 9/11, right? So shit was like, obviously he hadn't contributed to 9/11, but because America was in such a, you know, not so good mood at what had happened, when you taunt people saying, I'm looking at your planes and stuff like that, they're like, oh, we're going to get this fool eventually and get him over here, and, you know, America prison is prison. You're not going to get any vulnerable person's wing or something like that.
Be angry at something you did yourself.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
That's another subject for another day.
Yeah. So I think it was 10 years because, like, we were trying to say, look, we're not saying that he can't face trial, but we're just because obviously this dude was like a vulnerable person, like he had ASD and he had depression disorder, I believe, as well.
And he was very high on the spectrum, as well, wasn't he? He was like high functioning, but like not in life.
No, he was a social recluse, wasn't he? In the sense of he was, you know, on the web and stuff, and he was really interested in kind of UFOs and aircraft and all that kind of stuff.
Like I hate to use this analogy, but he definitely fell within your triad of impairments. You know.
Yeah. Because his I felt really bad for his mum, because if you think of, like, you know, people that like fight to, you know, get the correct benefit for a child of that obviously definitely maybe needs it in certain circumstances, and then like you'll have people saying, well, you know, they could work, and like you know, when they use that bullshit excuse of how they cut money and that's stressful enough when you see that happen to like a parent of a child on the spectrum, or maybe as a learning disability, or all the other things that it could be. But for that, like, that must have been pretty heavy shit to be like, I'm fighting to stop the American establishment taking my son to Guantanamo Bay, basically. And then, funnily enough, it was Theresa May that was the Home Secretary that actually abolished because we discussed this last week, the extradition treaty's always been a bit one way from the American to Britain thing. Like, you're seeing that now with is it Harry Dunn? Is that the guy that the American diplomat killed? Well, knocked over, and
Harry Dunn means something else in a selling fans eyes, like
allegedly, but
but no, that's the diplomat who knocked him over. Yeah,
and fled the country and is now hiding behind diplomatic immunity, and no one's saying that lady
Why
meant
is that thing diplomatic immunity. You know,
well, that's what they're saying, that good old Princess Andrew's going to use to get, you know.
That's like that's a massive privilege. Like you're basically unjust to any law.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that's massive responsibility. But if you're not taking that in the right way, then why are you in that position in the first place?
Yeah.
Surely these people have got to go under some sort of psychological tests to make sure that, you know, they're, well, one, sane, but two, like, in right mind of thinking to be having that kind of power.
Yeah.
To have diplomatic immunity, personally, I think that's more power than somebody who makes laws or...
well, it is, isn't it? It's like, it's immunity from prosecution, basically.
Yeah.
You know, you see it, and like, whenever I hear that, I think back to mob films, you know, where they cut a deal and like just go tell us everyone that all yous are murdered and you can get away with it. It's fine. We'll just get the rest of them. You know, but I think, I mean, they're hiding Prince Andrew at the moment. Like, he's in hiding because he's obviously alleged for some very serious shit, and you know, to talk about the extradition treaty, that serious shit is being on trial or in hearings in America, and it looks like they're going to request that he, you know, faces this case one way or another. Now, obviously, if something was to arise of where they requested him to go over there, and then he refused, and then we blocked it, the public would go absolutely wild, right? Because you know for a fact that if it was someone that wasn't in that position of privilege and in the royal family, they'd be getting sent over there in the first EasyJet. You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
economy class.
Yeah. All your guards just chain you around. We're in first class. I'll see you in like 19 hours. But
yeah,
I think that whole thing has been very, very interesting from 2019 with the whole...
Do you not feel like you've not heard a hell of a deal about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, especially the last 2 months with the Maxwell
case, yep.
It's not been in the mainstream media.
Nope.
Sorry, you will find it on the mainstream media if you look for it.
Yeah. But it's not obviously out there. People that wouldn't know that the case was going on would have no idea what was happening.
No, yeah. And you're like, I read The Independent a lot, you know, and I feel it's not totally unbiased, but if you're going to pick some unbiased journalism, that's probably your best bet, you know. Even that didn't have a hell of a lot about it, you know.
Like, see, when they have any other trial that's like big in the news, there's a channel dedicated to watching the entire trial.
Yeah.
That was nowhere to be seen for this one. So that's like, but we're talking about powerful people in powerful places again, right? Like, Maxwell was a socialite, wasn't she? So she was going around with people like Murdoch and that and all these parties and stuff. And
do you think this is something that, like, in 10 years' time is going to be revisited? Look at things like R. Kelly.
Yeah.
Like, R. Kelly
he's getting buried under the prison.
Yeah.
They thought Harvey Weinstein was going to... He is getting buried under the prison. When
but you look
down.
at him, he was in court for years, and like, I was like, oh, he's like not proven or that. And they finally, like, they had a trouble getting him to court initially. Got him there, got away with it, lived this life again for another 10 years. And now
it's just came about again.
Now he's starting to get punished.
Well, if you look at Bill Cosby, right, he's a free man again.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about Bill Cosby is like, yeah, I did it, but you prosecuted me wrong, so
I can get out.
I can get away with this.
We good.
Cha-ching.
Yeah, but it is crazy though, right? Because it almost feels like they put these people in as like a PR thing, and then when people forget about it, it's just like, let's put them out the back door. But we talk about the Joe Rogan thing for the next last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been an interesting roller coaster over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty relentless.
Damn you, Neil Young.
Yeah. Well, I was in absolute tears, right, because I seen this, and I was thinking, oh, there'd be some big standoff, and then the fact that Spotify just went, okay, music's gone.
So what? I done a bit of research off it, right? What is the original comment that Neil Young is taking offence with?
So Neil Young believes because if you've watched the Joe Rogan Experience of late, he has a variety of guests on, and most recently, especially the last couple of months, it has been for the last couple of years, but it's kind of became more I don't want to say heated, but it's became more, I think as stuff has become more questioned about the whole scenario thing, more people are watching certain episodes that are to do with the whole COVID situation, and obviously, like, Rogan does talk a lot about a lot of current events. COVID-19's been a current event for like 2 years now. So he recently had Dr. Peter McCulloch and Dr. Robert Malone. Now, Dr. Peter McCulloch is a physician in America who claims that that 80% of people that died at the start of the pandemic could have been saved with early treatment, and that early treatment has been suppressed to make money for big pharmaceutical companies. That's not what I'm saying. I don't know. I do have my own questions about the certain stuff within it, but I'm not going to say that I know anything for definite. This is just what I've heard from these experts that have been on certain podcasts and that. And people were trying to discredit this as like, oh, he's just trying to make money for himself, Dr. Peter McCulloch and that. But he's actually one of the most published physicians in his area. So he's got a lot of, like, you know, eligibility, legitimately. I don't know what word I'm trying to find there. Credibility. There we go. Yeah,
that'll do. Yeah,
got there in the end. And then Dr. Robert Malone is someone that was heavily involved in mRNA vaccination production in the 80s, and I don't know. I think Rogan said he might own patents, but I think it could be he just had something to do with patents. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were just saying that they're not necessarily for mass vaccination, and they don't believe in the whole passport system, and and you know, so on and so forth. Yep. And Rogan's kind of so Rogan has been a big kind of pusher of the ivermectin stuff, which is a treatment which people say that it does work, people say that it doesn't work. It's very polarized medication. Some studies they were trying to say from India showed that it totally brought the delta wave down, and other people say that it's totally ineffective against COVID-19. Again, I don't know. I think it's very hard to like seek truth in today's day and age because there's so much, you know, degrees of opinion on stuff.
Yeah, and it's so easy for people to voice their opinions these days.
Yeah, exactly. So Rogan had COVID in August. You know, he is not vaccinated, and he believes in, like, he's now got natural immunity from the disease. That, you know, he's not going to get vaccinated, and they've just been talking about side effects that have allegedly been related to the vaccinations and stuff like that. So Neil Young, and there was a bunch of doctors that writ, well, I don't know if the allegedly doctors writ to Spotify to say that Joe Rogan should be deplatformed off Spotify because he's spreading misinformation about COVID and the pandemic, and that he's killing his audience, which, for a guy that kind of promotes working out, you know, trying to eat healthier, not eating fast food as much, seems like a bit of a laughable statement. I suppose, like, you know, I don't want to. I've got my own thoughts on COVID. I think we all have our own thoughts on COVID.
Absolutely.
Fuck it. I'll just say. So I've had 2 vaccinations, right? And then I had COVID over Christmas. I opted out of the booster program. I had COVID 4 weeks ago. I'm no medical expert or scientist, so don't take any medical advice off of me or anyone here. Consult your GP and all that good stuff. I don't see the benefit of me getting vaccinated again 4 weeks after having the disease. I don't know how long the immunity is going to last, but I know it's probably going to be longer than a month. And I just find it strange that we're trying to revaccinate everyone over and over again here, where there's parts of the world that have not access to a single one and less healthcare and all that. That's my thought process on it. And I don't agree with the passport thing anyway, because I don't agree with segregations of society. I think regardless of treatments you had, you should be able to partake in society if you're in a free democratic country. That's just my belief system. But Rogan's been talking about, like, the mandates, because the mandates are pretty strong in America. Like, you will not get in to do a lot of stuff if you've not been fully vaccinated, if you will.
That, like.
And I think there was even a point where he went to do a gig in New, because Rogan's a comedian as well, so he went to do Madison Square Garden. I believe the governor tried to put something in place that would not let him do that. So there's been a big call from people that are, you know, pro mass vaccination, pro, you know, even the White House has been involved in it to an extent. There was a video of the press secretary saying that Spotify needs to do more to do this. First of all, I listen to Rogan, and I agree with him on some things, I disagree with him on others, right? That's what you're going to find with any single person on the planet. Yeah. Like, no one has the same exact worldview if you look into it deep enough. I've never listened to it and thought I'm purposely being influenced here, Because at the end of the day, the dude's just having conversation. Like, the last 10 years of his life, the majority of that has been on video camera and portrayed to the world. Everyone's fucked up when they've spoken about stuff. I'm not saying he's fucked up not necessarily on this thing, but obviously now they're bringing up the whole stuff where he was talking about race and all that, that they're trying to kind of use to keep going about it.
They'll probably go back and go through every single podcast now, and they will try and pick out everything wrong to back up their claim more so.
Yeah, and I think, you know what really kind of annoys me about that type of culture, because you see it with like people's tweets and stuff like that as well, and it'll sometimes be from maybe 10, 15 years ago or whatever it is. And the thing that annoys me about that, people fucking change, man. Do you know what I mean? Just because someone believes or says something out of taste or whatever at that does not mean that they believe or...
Did you ever see Jordan Henderson's Bebo profile?
Yeah. I've seen Andy Carroll's one.
I've never seen that. Like,
no, I think it's still up. I might link it to you later. It's a good listen, good read. But I just think, obviously, the internet has changed the game forever in the sense of you say something, it's pretty much on there most of the time for a while or eternity even.
Yeah.
And I don't like this whole kind of pile on, let's get rid of someone. I just don't think it's a good energy to have in any. Obviously, there is exceptions. Like if someone's doling out hate speech and, you know, propaganda that is of like really, really hardcore shit of like really extremist groups, then obviously there's a difference with that. Do you know what I mean? But Rogan's not doing that. He's just speaking to people and speaking his mind, and he has people on from both sides of the coin, and I enjoy listening to both, and people challenge him on stuff. And I think if you're going to get rid of conversation, you're treading a very, very, very slippery slope, because if people don't talk to each other, that's a lot of the thing that's been talked about over this whole thing is control, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, we were just talking about Jimmy Carr before coming on here as well, and without kind of going into like that too much, the government response to that is we're going to put in new online safety rules or something, and that seems like the type of stuff that the government opportunize on to benefit themselves. I think that if you Neil Young and all these musicians and that are trying to like take their music off Spotify and relevant platforms as a protest, they've got every right to do that. I'm not saying that they don't, but let's not call it what it is. You're doing that to try and stop people from listening to that specific show which they've had the choice of listening to.
He's probably boosted popularity for Rogan. There are probably a lot of people, but right, okay, I need to maybe listen and hear what this is about, you know? And
I think like when we were talking about elitism earlier, I think people see that with certain celebrities now as well. Like, I know that it's kind of used virtual signaling a lot of the time, but stuff where like it's very condescending. Like one thing that springs to mind is at the start of the pandemic, where all those celebrities got together and released that Imagine video, where they're all singing John Lennon's Imagine and that, and you're just like, leave it out. Do you know what I mean? Like we're all in this together and we're all sad. Like I'm just gonna go in my pool with my mansion, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, good luck having frozen chicken nuggets tonight.
You can't get toilet roll. You
know?
Yeah,
exactly. But I think when...
Do you know what I think? Like, if Spotify pulled Joe Rogan, right? You've literally got like Apple Music and that sitting there rubbing their hands.
Yeah.
Like,
he's going to go somewhere.
Oh my God, this is a cash cow.
Yeah.
You know?
And like majority of people listening to him are just going to follow him to where he's going.
Yeah. And if you're on YouTube...
Yeah.
You can't really... Anything can go on YouTube as long as it's PG, you know. You can pretty much put anything on there.
Yeah.
Like you got hate speeches on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
You got literal hate speeches. Like you've got what was it somebody linked me to a while ago? He was like, check this guy out. Oh, it was a preacher condemning gay guys in America. It's the most like fucked up shit you will ever hear, like telling
it's on the
them,
platform though.
Yeah, but he's got a platform for it. He's allowed to express it. It's a freedom of expression. As you say, you're treading a very slippery slope. You start censoring what people say.
Yeah.
Or you start trying to stop people talking to each other.
Especially when one of the things that I've found very, very strange over this entire thing is the slogan, follow the science. Now, from my point of view, science has never been a linear thing. It's always been something that's contested by multiple avenues and stuff like that. I don't think like it's...
99% of science is like... Oh, that worked. Shit.
Exactly, yeah. Like, oh, I guess we have antibiotics then. But like, Tim Dillon, who's a comedian in America, goes on Rogan quite often, made a good point that the Rogan thing seems like it's becoming more of a political hatchet job than it is about COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because the Biden admin, like, I mean, he's been very not critical of Biden, but points out Biden, you know, everyone kind of sees it for what it is in the sense if he's in cognitive decline, right? Like, there's no doubt about this, but some of the stuff he says doesn't make sense and stuff like that. And I'm not meaning that to be mean. I'm just saying what I see. Like, if you're not realizing there's a microphone right in front of you and calling someone a stupid son of a bitch at an official press conference, and you're meant to be a diplomatic figure of state, not good. And but they know that if Rogan's there for the next election cycle, you know, he's going to point stuff out that's going to make them look bad. So if they get rid of him, that takes that away, you know. And I think you're seeing it with the whole Ukraine thing as well. Like, to do with Boris and Biden, like, Boris is bringing this up every day, and so's Biden. We've already sent them weapons. Nothing's even happened yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've been, like, that 100,000 troops on the border has been there for, like, over a month. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, like, not trying to, like, be pro-Russian or anything here, but, like, I'm just thinking, in any strategic move, if they were going to do it, would they really wait for us to send weapons to halt their progress more than just blitzkrieg it? You know what I mean?
And then you've got, like... The Russians are good. Like they like to test us. Like even this week, like coming in airspace and things. Yeah, and it's like I feel if Russia wanted to take someone like us out, it's gonna happen. Yeah, like, there's nothing we're gonna be able to do about it. Like
I think that they're very good provocateurs, and I think Putin kind of likes to have them on strings, really, doesn't he? And
look at the whole Trump.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just thinking that Biden and Boris are kind of using this to maybe shift attention from maybe stuff that's going on in their own countries that's not really working for them.
There's a lot of deflection in Boris's premiership. I'll call it a premiership. It's not a fucking leadership.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And they're talking about, like, oh, Rogan should go because of misinformation. Have you seen some of the politicians of state with the... Literally, George Bush told you they had weapons of mass destruction. We're still looking for them. Yeah. You know, Boris said he didn't have a party. He didn't. He had 30.
What do you feel is the worst thing Boris has done in his time since he's been in charge? Like, cause
what is the worst one?
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot. I mean, like, there's some that are like, there's ones that are obviously like just this is just ridiculous. Like, it's like to be expected. But one that I suppose is truly, I don't know, probably just like the fucking the worst thing about it probably is not maybe the things that he's done, the lack of kind of the contempt that he has for it all, just to kind of avoid it all and not address any of it. Is probably the worst thing overall, because I can't really put anything above the other, because they're all as wacky and batshit crazy and illegal as the rest of them.
Pro-Rogan Parliament, I think that was, you know, willingly tried to break the law to get his own way. You know, and it actually took the Queen saying, no, you can't do that.
Like, oh, what? I can't just fucking rearrange law to suit my own needs anymore. What's the point of being a conservative?
Like, you can say that, like, COVID, hundreds of thousands of people dying, but that wasn't just directly him. I think that was a series of failings by many parties. You know, and I also thought, like, you can't really prepare for something like that.
Yeah. And then obviously, like, you have the whole Dominic Cummings thing, which is like, he's went proper double agent on him now. He's raging that his daddy.
Do you feel there's going to be an inquest in there?
Well, Cummings has got to watch himself, man, because, like, I was seeing an interview with him of him basically kind of gloating that he influenced the last election and managed to kind of suppress Corbyn and promote Boris more.
And he had a lot of influence over decisions that Boris was making.
Yeah.
And he seemed to imply that a lot.
He was like, as soon as he got elected, I was trying to get him out. And I'm like, if you're doing that type of fuckery behind the scenes, that will catch up with you down the line somewhere. You cannot just manipulate your own way at the top. I mean, you can for now, obviously, because it's apparently completely fine, but eventually that will catch, like, I do believe some of the things that he says about Boris. I also think others are bullshit. I think he is raging that his daddy sacked him from his job when he defended him so hard originally. Do you know what I mean? So I believe half the shit he says and half the shit I don't believe, because obviously some of it is probably true, because Boris is Boris. And half of it's probably just bitterness that he doesn't have a job anymore, and that
Yeah. Boris, aside from all the politics, though, like, look at his personal life, man. Like, how many marriages and kids and things has he got? And it's like...
Do you know that apparently is... Well, this was from Cummings, so whether it's true or not, apparently his wife... when the stuff was coming over to Italy and that in February, you know, when like COVID was like, people were like, oh shit, this might actually come here this time, rather than like swine flu, or like everyone panicked, and then like 2 weeks later, like, oh, it's over. Apparently, like, she was really raging and saying to Boris, like, get onto the fucking Telegraph because they've put a really derogatory story about her dog in there, and I'm like,
aye, jeez, man.
Apparently, what to be injected with it on TV as well, but I think that might be bullshit, but. I don't know. It's hard to... It's very good because it's hard to differentiate what would be a Boris story and what wouldn't, because they all sound like Boris stories, whether they're manufactured or the truth.
You'll find, like, regardless if it's like Boris, it's come from that party somewhere, something's happened, you know, it's someone who's had an involvement somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely crazy, and it's crazy to think we're only halfway through.
Yeah, I know. It's felt. I was like, you know what? Like, we've had some really shit prime ministers in my time, at least. Anyway, like, we've had Tony Blair, who was like meant to be the new Great Hope, turned out to be a massive fraud.
The first few years of Blair were all right, though.
Yeah, and then he just totally fucked it away.
Yeah,
right, shit. He's getting a knighthood now. That's
scary.
That's pretty crazy.
It's scary. Yeah, and then...
But we've had Cameron, May, but the only one, right, and I'm not saying he was a good prime minister, I think he was lived with a shitty situation and that, but I think the only person you can tell is maybe quite a genuine person is Gordon Brown. Failed massively as prime minister. Let's not, let's call a spade for a second, but I'm like, each one of those eras felt like it's went quick. This one feels like it's like a never-ending cartoon.
It's crazy. I think the fact that he's been around for a while as well with Mayor of London, you know, and there was this, is he going to be prime minister? And if you'd said to somebody like 5 years ago, that guy's going to be in charge of the country, you'd have pissed yourself.
Yeah,
like, no chance.
People were joking about it, like, oh, imagine him as prime minister, be a good laugh, and now like,
and the fact that we had him and Trump
at the same time.
What
a fly in the wall conversation. Did you see him? Well, forget about the Trump conversations. Apparently at the G20, him and Biden both agreed that they like trains. Any mention of trade deals?
Did you see him getting like guided onto the stage because he was steaming? But the thing is, like, the world leaders, even they're laughing at him. Like, they know it's like, it's just Boris. Like, like we've never been viewed so low on the world stage. Like,
you imagine like him trying to like put anything serious across, like deter threats. Like, it was like when, when the Salisbury thing happened with the Novichok, and Theresa May was trying to be strong and stable, so that went well, but she was like saying we won't be intimidated by Russia and stuff like that, and the next day he put the entire Russian fleet past the cliffs of Dover, and I was like, fuck, he really, like, but I think it's easy to do that to people that you think they don't really mean it, do they?
Exactly. Like, no, it is actually, and I think the thing about the G20 as well is, like, Nicola Sturgeon absolutely had him on toast for that week. Like, she was going about like introducing herself really to the world stage.
Yeah, where he was going back and forth on trains and shit and making a speech and then leaving and then making another speech.
It bodes well. I do think, like, I don't want to get too much into an independence chat here. I do think independence is coming for Scotland.
I think it's probably better for that movement if he stays.
Yeah.
Because the argument just gets greater and greater every day with him there, right?
I think because he gives so little a shit about us, whereas I feel like someone like Sunak coming in is going to have a bit more of a head switch on.
He's going to have he's going to be a bit more diplomatic about it and ease relations. Yeah, I get what you mean. Is Boris like the politician version of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Like, he's just hanging on and he just will never get the sack?
I think he's like the politician version of Sam Allardyce. Just like lands on his feet, like he can do absolutely no wrong. That guy can just still lands on his feet.
20-1 for Boris to be the new Watford manager. You heard it here first.
Probably like
he won't. He won't. He'll get them out.
Like 9-1 at least.
At least you won't have to be part of Europe, Watford. You know what I mean? But We'll talk about Celtic for like the last closing minutes.
Yeah. We'll see. What was the final score?
It was 4-0 last time 4-0. I checked. Let us just
kind of been a bit crazy. Like, see, 6 months ago, if you told me this was happening now,
4-0. Yeah,
I would have just been like, no chance.
Well, do you remember? Not even that. Like, remember when we were speaking to Kev?
Yeah.
And like, we were talking about the situation in Celtic, and it was just like, no. We're like, all right, okay, sound. I can just like see the viewers just go, nee.
Yeah, it's been really exciting. I feel there's a buzz about the place again.
Yeah,
buzz about the place.
Well, I watched the Old Firm. Well, we both watched the Old Firm the other night, and I was expecting like it to be like a really competitive game, just because I thought like both team. Like, obviously, when Rodgers was at Celtic doled out some hidings to Rangers, but it's fair to say that it was like a superpower against a not so well equipped country in a conflict. Do you know what I mean? Like, they were using Clint Hill at the back. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna get very far with that. Whereas, like, in all fairness to them, they have a pretty decent side now.
Yeah,
and like
a lot of them guys in that Rangers team would start for a Premier League team.
Yeah, like, people like Joe Aribo is a good player, and I
can see like Goldson and Aribo going to like Newcastle or something. That's kind of their level. They're not. There's not that I can see any players in the Scottish Premier League being at a Man United or a Liverpool level just now, because there's not players when they do get to that stage normally go to a Southampton or they go to an Aston Villa.
Which is disappointing, isn't it? Well, not maybe Aston Villa's got like quite a big history behind it, but it always disappoints me when you see like a really good player in the SPL and they go to like a Watford or a Crystal Palace, because it's like
you're at Brentford.
Yeah, and
that was a big one for me.
It's like I know like Celtic have absolutely like botched the Champions League for a few years now, in terms of like they'll get to a certain stage and lose the home game even if they've won the away game.
Yep.
But it's like, I remember it was good when both Scottish teams were in the Champions League, and both like went to the quarterfinals a couple of times and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Like I've seen a massive decline in the quality of Scottish teams in Europe over the last 20 years. When my earliest kind of memories, you're talking like before Henrik Larsson era, like Di Canio era, Di Canio, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, George Cadetti, that kind of players. That was my earliest memories. And you're still talking, we were getting into, even though UEFA Cup was straight knockout round football back then, Celtic Rangers, you're probably getting a quarter final at least every season between the two of them. Aberdeen normally were in the mix somewhere.
Yeah, they drew with Bayern Munich at Batagri.
Yeah,
like, what the fuck is that about?
That. Yeah,
that's like when Portsmouth drew with AC Milan when they had Kaká and Ronaldinho.
Like,
that is fucking nuts.
And then you've also had like, have you been to Celtic Park to like a European game or
not to a European game, but I have been to the area of Glasgow. Yeah,
and it's like you can't underestimate that 12th. Man, look at the atmosphere on Wednesday night. Yeah. That was absolutely.
Do you know what's the only sad thing about that is they really need to figure out this whole segregation of fans thing.
Do you think so? Like, I personally, if they can make it work, I feel if Celtic were to go to Ibrox or Rangers were to go to Parkhead and beat them in front of 60,000 of their own,
it would make it even better.
That would make it just that much better.
Do you think it would play a massive difference? Like, do you think that if like how many before it got, because it was a certain number, then it got put down to 800, wasn't it? I think did Rangers Rangers do it first and then Celtic responded by doing the same thing.
What happened is your ticket allocation used to be about 3,000.
Right. Okay. Which is a healthy away support to an extent. Yeah.
Especially for an Old Firm game, because if you're willing to go as a Celtic fan to Ibrox, you're a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
You know all the songs. You are dressed head to toe in green.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
For the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's not like your casual fan going. Yeah. Getting a day out,
having a nice lolly and stuff.
Yeah, it's not that. It's your hardcore. So I think they started off at about 3,000, and then during COVID, obviously your stadium allocation was massively down, so they reduced the ticket allocation. Then there was an argument between the two clubs on the number, so Rangers just put it to 0, and Celtic have followed suit.
Yeah. Do you think if Rangers, like, let's just say, in an alternative universe, I'm not saying that Rangers would have won the game on Wednesday because I thought they were well beat, but if they'd had a support there, do you think they would have played any bit better than what they did?
No, I think the way Celtic are playing just now,
it's another level, really, isn't it?
Like, don't. I said this to a guy on Thursday morning at work. He was a Rangers fan. He was like, "Oh, Rangers were really poor." I says Rangers were shocking. But do not take that fact away from Celtic. Were absolutely brilliant. Like
the first 10 minutes, like, because the game kind of goes with how the first 10 minutes goes usually. Yeah. And I thought you didn't let them have a chance to even get into some sort of rhythm. And then obviously, like, it's on them because they did have a lot of possession second half, because the amount of work that Celtic put in, you're not going to be able to keep that up for 90 minutes. No, but they did a good solid job of keeping a clean sheet for like the second half, you know. And like, you know, that Rangers team it's you know, it's not bad. It's pretty fucking good. Like, they've got people like Aribo, and I know Morelos was away on international.
Kamara Roof's a good player.
Yeah.
You know, Kamara Roof is a kind of player that should be given Starfelt and Vickers problems, you know. I get he's up front and he's up top by himself, but in a game like that against two big centre-halves, I'm playing him over Morelos.
Yeah.
You know.
Because Morelos is more like a physical guy, where Roof's
he's a physical guy, he's a guy that you're maybe playing alongside a Roof.
Yeah.
You know, Morelos is a good goal scorer against Kilmarnock, against Motherwell, against your smaller teams in Europe. I'm not taking anything away from Morelos. I don't like his attitude, but I wouldn't say no to having a player like that in my team.
Is that the type of player that if he plays for you, you love him, but if he plays for an opposition team, you hate
100%.
him?
Yeah.
It's like the 100%. Same, like, for example, like a Bruno Fernandes, isn't it? Like, he buys like a free kick, bit, and you see a fly hit his shoulder and he's down, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. He just bought a free kick. But the other side, you're like, oh, I can't stand that dude.
Yeah. But he's also, them kind of players you've got to respect. Scott Brown's one of them.
Yeah.
Scott Brown, and you can't say that these players are talked about like this for not being a half-decent player. You know, I don't hate Morelos because he's a good player. I don't hate Morelos because he plays for Rangers. I hate Morelos because he's got a dirty attitude, you know. Look at the amount of sending offs that he's had in his career. You know, Gerrard got to a point with him where he dropped him because he was costing them that many games. Actually, you know.
It was like literally every Old Firm he would get. And Aberdeen he got sent off.
Aberdeen, I think he's got like 3 or 4 red cards against Aberdeen.
I mean, that's crazy.
And that's like just players getting in his head. You know,
because as soon as you let that be known, they're just going to do it to you every single time. It's the same with like when Aberdeen played Rangers and Scott Brown was like egging on Ryan Kent because like they've had previous in the Old Firm and stuff like that. And I think if you show that kind of weakness, if anything, people are going to try and exploit that every single time they play against you.
That goes back to Scott Brown and
Alhaj Diouf.
No, Joey Barton.
The ultimate shithouse rivalry.
So that is a difference between the two, right? They're both great at that mental side of the game, but Scott Brown was a player. Barton, Newcastle was a player. By the time he was at Rangers, wasn't a player, you know. And that showed in them Old Firms, like, both mentally the same, both capable of getting into players' heads, but you've still got to be able to play to go along with that, you know. You've got to be able to, you can't just say it and not prove it. You know, Brown, I think he came away from Celtic personally because I felt like he still wanted to be in the team, but he wasn't able to give the team what he was able to give the team 5-6 years ago. And I think what he's done is he's personally, it's just a personal thought. I think he's went to another club where he can kind of screw with Rangers as well.
Do you think that his despise was that big? That's why he's chosen Aberdeen.
And the thing is, Scott Brown, there's many photos of him going about in a Rangers top as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and it's mental to just see how that can change. Like I can't think of that myself because I couldn't ever imagine supporting anyone but Celtic.
Yeah.
But he obviously was a Rangers fan at some point, and now he's completely the opposite.
Yeah,
it just shows that the level, how deep he is, the hatred must be there. Well, I wouldn't say hatred, but like passion for Celtic has obviously outdone his support for Rangers.
Yeah.
Celtic's obviously given him a fantastic life, and he's always
won many titles, and a captain.
Going to be a legend.
Yeah.
Left at the right time. I think if he'd stayed another season, and
it could have been a bit of a tough watch.
Yeah.
Especially in this system, like, you know, Father Time catches up with us all.
Steven Gerrard at Liverpool.
Yeah.
You know, he should have left 2 years before he did.
Yeah. And like you said, like he's gone to Aberdeen. Like, have you ever been like in a fucking pub for a Rangers Aberdeen game? They're even worse than the Old Firm sometimes with some of the people. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just because we're up in the north.
I think he's up for that job next season.
Yeah, well, I always find it funny because there's that video that people keep showing up where he gets fouled at Pataudry and like the fans are giving him stick and he gets up and he's like beating his chest and all that. And I think now he's about to manage them. It's like, oh, how time flies.
Like, you don't get players like that very often.
No.
There's not another player in Scottish football like that just now. And I go as far as to say I can't think of one in the English Premier League like Scott Brown, who's just mentally getting into players' heads. But
it's like that Roy Keane effect, isn't it?
Patrick Vieira was amazing at it. Roy Keane was good at it, but he used to lose his temper too much.
Yeah.
Patrick Vieira used to do it, but was calm all the time. Like, personally, I think it's a controversial one. I think Keane was a better player. I think he was more aggressive in the tackle than Vieira,
which is so strange because the popular opinions that Keane was a better kind of mental specialist than an actual player.
Just personal opinion, I'd say the exact opposite. I think Vieira, look at the levels he went to with France and things like that. I feel that Keane was a better. Keane made that Man United midfield tick. I know Scholes was in there, but Scholes wouldn't have been able to do what he done without
Keane's energy.
Keane playing that Scott Brown role. I know Scott Brown was after Keane, but that's the role I'm going to describe it as.
Well, he definitely wasn't Scott Brown at Celtic, Roy Keane, was he?
God,
his race was run by then.
Wild. I remember watching that first game against Clyde.
Rough one.
Yeah. We didn't have that great a team back then, though. I'm thinking of players like Paul Telfer at right back.
And who was playing up?
Yuri Jarosik.
Right, no, Riordan was the year after when he...
we had...
McGeady was still there at the time.
My cult favourite, you've always got your players that you maybe at your team for a year or so, but Magic Zaraski.
Oh, yeah, he scored a winner at Ibrox,
absolutely
didn't he?
Loved that guy, like, just brilliant player. Only had one season at Celtic, and I think he scored about 20 goals, but he was unreal. Another one was Kamara,
the
Henri Kamara.
Aye.
Yeah, he was another one, just a bit of a cult hero. Didn't have much, but you can put the shoe on the foot and you look at players like Freddie Ljungberg.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He got the number 7 as well. He got the number 7 and just ruined it for 2 games for us. Like, we've had more bad players and good players over the years at Celtic. And I think Rangers are the same. They've had more bad players than good players. But I think that's not... It's the same with any manager.
I think it's because those two teams have to... Because of the money that's in football, especially the English Premier League, they're kind of having... Like, I remember the Scottish Premier League used to have some of, like, the best fucking players in the world in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could have fucking, like, Henrik Larsson.
I could go through...
Loudrup or
look at Celtic's starting lineup under O'Neill. You had Douglas, Scotland International. Bobo Baldi, just an absolute unit of a guy. Johan Mjalby, unit of a guy. Yusuf Haran, unit of a guy. Belgian international. All 4 of them internationals. That's just your defence. Jackie McNamara, Neil Lennon, Paul Lambert, Stilian Petrov, John Hartson, Chris Sutton, and Henrik Larsson.
Yeah.
All internationals.
Yeah.
All playing high level. You've got
Amaruso, Van Bronckhorst from like the other side.
Yeah, Amaruso, Van Bronckhorst, Lovenkrands, Moles, George Alberts. Going back a bit earlier, Gaza, Loudrop.
Yeah.
Van Hooijdonk at Celtic. Look at what we've got now.
Yeah, it's a very different market to be. But to be fair, like if anything, if you look at how Rangers have kind of used the Championship, because a lot of their, like, if you think of like James Tavernier and Joe Rebo and you know, like most of their Connor Goldson, like they've all kind of came from like maybe being benched from Premier League sides or Championship players that are going out of contract, and they've used that market very well to their effect. And obviously now you've seen with Celtic with the Japanese market where they've got
Japanese market's a bit crazy, like, because do you think we've got all them players for less than 8 million quid?
Yeah. That Hatate guy, if he ever leaves Celtic, it's going to be a lot more than £8 million that you're going to be getting for that guy.
£1 million we paid for him.
Yeah.
1 million. Kyogo, when he's fit, is just
unreal, isn't he? The 2 goals against Hibs in the cup final.
Yeah, absolute filth.
Yeah.
But even aside for the Japanese guys, you've got players like this O'Reilly that's came in.
Yeah.
Everywhere he was on Wednesday night. Carter Vickers, Jota, Abada's
going to be a Premier League player.
I was actually looking at the lineup before the Old Firm. 9 of them players are in the first season.
Yeah. The turnover that like Ange Postecoglou's done is like whether Celtic win or just go close to overthrowing Rangers for the league. He's been a success in every which way possible. You know what I mean?
So I said at the start of the season I'd take second.
Yeah,
I would have took second. There was a lot of papers quoting us third or fourth.
Yeah,
I don't know where that was coming from because regardless of who's managing Celtic, look at Ronnie Dyla, look at Tony Mowbray.
Yeah,
you're always going to be in that top 2 positions.
Exactly. Like the only one that's ever threatened when Rangers were like trying to work their way back up through the leagues and that. The only one that ever came close to it was only for like 3 weeks, was Aberdeen after they beat you a couple of times.
Well, no, 2006 with Hearts when they had
Presley, was that and Paul Hartley,
and Craig Gordon.
I actually thought they were going to do it that year. I was like, Hearts are going to fucking win the SPL.
Everyone forgets that was the Paul Le Guen year.
Yeah.
So that's why Hearts finished second.
Yeah, Rudy Scatchell as well.
It's just kind of, I suppose, a finishing point.
And they really fucked up by selling Celtic, Paul Hartley and Presley in January, didn't they?
Yeah, and there was word of Gordon coming then as well, until he went to Sunderland for 9 mil. But just kind of like a finishing point. I get that like Scottish football has been dominated for the last 10 years by Celtic. I'm going to have a very biased opinion here. Rangers have had 1 in the last 10. And it took the weakest Celtic squad of that 10 years for them to get that title. So I don't really see how a lot of Rangers fans are coming on and shouting about, oh, we're going to go into 56, 57, 58. Celtic had a rough year. They sorted themselves out and they seem to be flying again, whereas Rangers lost Gerrard and have massively declined.
That is probably the thing that will define this season, I believe, because... They had no, I'm not saying...
I had a bit of fear against a Gerrard side in an Old Firm.
Yeah? Because they had that...
Not in the Rodgers era.
No.
Neil Lennon era, I could not stand down Gerrard teams. The thing is, he plays exactly like Liverpool. He lines up, they play that custom gegenpress style.
4-3-3, yeah.
4-3-3. And it takes a pressing team like Celtic against Wednesday night to be able to play against that.
Yeah.
Celtic got shown up in the first Old Firm this season. They weren't dominated, but they got shown up trying to play this heavy, intense football. I feel that was due to lack of recruits in Celtic's end.
Yeah.
Now that they've recruited, there's not been one bad signing. There's not been one bad signing. And then a year ago, we didn't know where these players were going to come from. We had
no idea who the manager was.
No.
Like, can you imagine if Eddie Howe became Celtic manager? I actually think that it would have been worse if he became manager. I actually think he would have done a worse job than what Postecoglou's doing
There's a lot of talk on the Celtic forums about Postecoglou wasn't second favourite.
Really?
Yeah, Paul Lambert was second favourite.
Ooh,
yeah, so that could have went pretty fucking wrong, you know. Personally, I wanted the guy that was at Hibs.
Yeah.
But that's obviously never materialised.
Yeah.
But we kind of landed on our feet.
It worked out for the better anyway.
I'll just kind of finish off. That pressing game is just...
That's ridiculous.
It's sick.
That's just... Do you know what? It almost... You know how we were talking about like gegenpressing that a minute ago? That is like one of the closest... And I'm not... I wasn't a boyhood Celtic fan in that, so maybe I do hold a slight bit of bias in my later life, but I'm not saying that. I try to be neutral as I can with it, but that is the closest that I've seen to like what they quote unquote a constant pressure side. Yeah. If you think of like Barcelona in 10, 11, I'm not saying that the Celtic side is as good as that side. I'm just saying that the intensity of that out of possession press. I was saying to you, I think
have you seen the stats?
Yeah, it's great. They're all in like the
second highest amount of passes per game in top 10
Yeah.
leagues in Europe.
That's mental.
It's only Man City they're behind.
And I was saying to you, and I'm not just saying because it's like the flavour of the month. That side looks the best Celtic side that I've seen since the Martin O'Neill days. I know that they've had Rodgers and stuff like that, but I think Rodgers was in a good comfy position where there was never really a challenger for him, and he had good recruitment and stuff. He you see him at Leicester now, and he's kind of like
Rodgers could go and waste £3 million on a player, and it wouldn't be because they were still winning.
Yeah.
If Celtic go and blow $3 million on a player and he doesn't turn out, it's a bit more scrutinised now. Mm-hmm. I think the players look at the players Roger had. Nadir Chifchi.
Yeah, Jesus.
Players like Carlton Cole.
All I found was cigarettes and Carlton Cole.
Players like that, but no, it's exciting to watch. I can't see Celtic getting beat the rest of the season, apart from maybe the away Old Firm.
Yeah,
I can't see them dropping points, but I think the key to playing them is keep them quiet the first half, tire them out. Play the Man United way against them.
Try take it to penalties and lose that penalty shootout.
Relentless for 80 minutes, just hold them off and then pin them in the last 10. Because that second half, they were comfortable, but they were a different team the second half because they're exhausted. Yeah,
it's just you have to have inhumane levels of stamina that you can probably never reach to continue.
But it's going to be interesting to see how long they can keep it up, because look at what happened with Liverpool and Klopp.
Yeah,
they first came in, they hit the ground running, they won all these trophies, and all these injuries started happening, and this team is literally falling apart. I'd say they're starting to get back a little better now. They've recruited really well.
Luis
in fact.
Diaz and Fabio Carvalho in the summer as well from Fulham.
Signings, scary enough that I think Spurs actually had the best recruitment in January.
Yeah, with Conte. He's going to shithouse them into the top 4 in it. Anyway, enough talking football. It gets me miserable sometimes.